Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 26 of the Sheepdog Brotherhood. I am your host, Brett Attebery. You will probably notice someone is absent today. That would be my co-host, Doug Hewlett, who has just decided to skip today's episode. Actually,
I'm
that's not
filling
true.
in for him.
Yeah. Actually, that's not true. He had other plans, but we always make fun of each other. So while he's not here, I can say anything about him, and there's not a whole lot he can do about it. So yeah, he's just being lazy and just decided not to join today. What can I say?
Hey, I was almost about to do that too, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So, Doug, we miss you, brother, but we're going to go ahead today because we have a very special guest, Nathan Berning. That name may sound familiar to you because 2 weeks ago we had Nathan's wife on, Emily Berning, and we talked about their incredible ministry called Let Them Live. And as Emily was telling the story about that, Nathan, of course, was part of that story. And, we're sitting there talking later and we're like, this podcast is for dudes. So here's a dude who's living exactly what we talk about. We focus on that John Paul II quote, God has assigned as a duty to every man, the dignity of every woman. And it's beautiful. Of course, those are beautiful words, but I think a lot of people can just kind of take them as a concept and not necessarily live them in their daily lives. Nathan does that in his daily life, which we're going to talk about today. So we thought it'd be great to have Nathan on. He's so generously agreed to join us. So Nathan, welcome to the Sheepdog Brother.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I mean, heaven, yeah. Sorry.
First of all, before we even get started, because I know everybody who's watching this is extremely curious about what's in the background behind you. So I got to know, what is going on back there behind you?
Well, a question we get often is, why is your address a trailer business? And the reason is because when we started Let Them Live, we literally thought we'd maybe help 10 moms during our lifetime. And it's grown like crazy, but it's very hard to change the address. So we're in the trailer sales right now, and we're actually in our Airstream museum. So I can kind of show you really quick. Still in progress.
That's so cool.
We got a bunch of different Airstreams in here, and this is one that we've been working on and getting ready for the opening of our museum. So I've just been making this like my makeshift office while I'm in Indiana, Okay. It's inspiring. It inspires me.
So I got to know, what inspired you or somebody in your family to say, hey, we should create a museum around. I got to know.
That's a funny story. We had the world's smallest Airstream. It's 10 feet inside of the Airstream, and there was only one built, and it was built for the founder of Airstream. And my grandpa sold it to this guy named Ken Faber. And so I called this guy Ken Faber, and he said that he had donated it to a museum. And I said, oh, well, we're starting a museum. In that moment, I decided to start a museum because I knew he had a bunch of different trailers. And so I filed the paperwork that same day. And that was about probably 4 years ago. And since then, he's donated 3 trailers to us, and then he sold us a couple trailers. So basically, It all started with Ken Faber and him generously just wanting to support our museum and help us to kind of preserve the legacy of our family, because this was the first Airstream dealership in the country. So 1953, my great-grandparents started it, and I bought it from my grandparents.
Okay. And for those of us who are not into that kind of thing, Airstream is what? That is, okay. For those of you who aren't... Travel trailer, yeah. For those of you who aren't watching the video of this, it's a big old travel trailer. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, Airstream. So Airstreams are the silver Twinkies that you see on the highway, occasionally. They have kind of a cult following,
Silver Twinkies.
People that have Airstreams, they'll never buy any other trailer. It's
considered
like the highest quality trailer ever built because they don't leak much. They're just a lot better quality overall, you know. So, and there
Okay.
is really like an Airstream cult of people that are just exclusive to that brand. So there's
Okay.
about 250,000 of them out in the world, and uh, so we serve that community through this business. And I kind of
Okay.
resurrected the business because it had actually failed, and that's why it started to become Let Them Live, was because it was basically an empty shell. And God just started rewarding us by giving us Airstreams that we were selling for 15, 20,000 more than we were buying them for. And that
Wow.
was part of the way that we started Let Them Live, actually, was through selling Airstreams and just having that money and being able to support moms. So
That is incredible. And they look, I got it. I mean, I laughed when you said silver Twinkie because I, of course, never heard of that before. But now, anytime I see one on the highway, I'll never get it out of my mind. That's pretty funny.
yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. All right, so enough about that, and congratulations on the museum, and hope it's very
Oh yeah,
successful.
thank
Looks
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Looks awesome, by the way. So let's go back to Emily told kind of the story of how Let Them Live got started, and you were a key piece of that story. Um, same story told from two different perspectives can still be very interesting. So I would love to hear you talk about what happened. What was it? I know the story, but maybe some people listening right now haven't heard it yet. What was it that motivated you to do the thing that you're going to talk about here in a second? I think that would be really great for our men who are listening to this to hear.
It ties right into like what you were saying about John Paul II. I mean, the quote, that's almost exactly what I was doing. I was supporting my wife because when I met Emily, and she was my girlfriend at the time, I was pro-choice. I did not have a very firm commitment to the pro-life movement at all. In fact, I just really didn't even think about the issue. So I had worked for Dr. Ben Carson, and I ran his Ask Ben service, which we had to actually answer questions in his voice. And through that, I was exposed to the pro-life movement. And then through working for the Leadership Institute, I would recruit pro-life students and stuff like that for Students for Life and start Students for Life chapters. And that's where I met Emily, was at the Leadership Institute. So I just remember when I would recruit pro-life students at first, it was like I was plugging my nose because I was not pro-life, and I didn't like the connotation of it, and I didn't like the idea of it. And I was very libertarian about it. And I was just like, I'm not going to do it. I don't like it, but it's just not my issue. And that's what I told Emily. I actually said, it's not my issue. However, it is your issue. You're known as Pro-Life Emily. I will help you to start your dream, like to make a nonprofit, because I had a background in starting businesses. So really, that's kind of how Let Them Live got started. And it started out as more of a political thing. So we went to Ireland for the Save the Eighth movement. And that's when I think my heart really started to shift, was in Ireland. And just seeing Emily's heart for the unborn and for the moms. And then we brought the heartbeat bill to Michigan, and it became the heartbeat petition from Ohio. We brought it from Ohio to Michigan, and then it started spreading all over the place. And it just didn't quite sit right with us doing legislation. And Emily told you the story about that first mom, that first night where I, at this point, was pro-life, and I was scrolling through a pro-life forum, and I just stumbled across this mom and her story, this cousin of this mom that was living in her car, and it was 9 degrees out. And you've heard that story, but basically just that did not sit right with me. And that goes right in alignment with your quote too, where it's like I did not feel like I could just do nothing. So I asked her cousin, what is it that's causing her to have the abortion? And she said, well, she's living in her car. It's 9 degrees. She lost custody of her children. She got kicked out of her apartment. So I felt personally obligated to do something about that. And it was super late at night. I shook Emily awake and I said, hey, you want to save a life? And we drained our bank account and saved that first life. And then after that, we were just like scrambling for change to try and keep doing it. but it was quite a gap of time between the first and the second save, and it went from 6 months to a month to 3 weeks to a week to now. We probably have anywhere from 3 to 5 women that come to us a day,
Yeah.
and everything has just exponentially grown. Like last month, we raised double what we had raised in any other month in the history of the organization. So it's just really been growing a lot, and I think
That's
people
awesome.
are kind of picking up on that, the demand side of abortion, because we fought for to limit abortion, so to limit the supply of abortion for so long, and Let Them Live is focused on the demand side. So what is it that's actually causing a woman to choose to have an abortion? And when we stumbled upon that, like, okay, it's a financial thing, we can solve that. We can pay the bills. And we wanted to see if that was replicable, and it was, and it just kept happening, and we kept saving lives. And at first it was on GoFundMe, and it just kind of took off. Every time that we would run a fundraiser, it would fill up, and we just focused on saving one life at a time. That was the goal, was let's just save the next life. We can't save them all, but let's save one. And one over time has become over 1,000, in a pretty short period of time, really about 5 years.
Yeah, it's incredible. I do want to talk more about your conversion experience in terms of pro-life, but since you brought it up, and it's something that's very near to my heart in the work that I do at Heroic Media and the work that our team does, this issue brought up about the demand side of the equation, because I think what's happened is, I'd love to hear your view on this. From our team's perspective, there's been so much focus the last half century on laws, right? Roe v. Wade, but then anything legislatively that affects the pro-life issue, and that's fine and good. It's great. But I think what happened is people believed, at least on the ground, in the field, on the front lines, that those laws would have an impact at restricting supply of abortion. In other words, just make it illegal, and like many things in any kind of industry that you made illegal, well, they can't make it anymore. They can't supply it anymore. And this makes logical sense to me. I mean, that's kind of how things work. When they become illegal, you're trying to cut off whoever it is that's supplying that service or supplying that product. You're trying to make it illegal for them to do so they won't do it. But what happened is, and pro-lifers, I'm starting to see in the last year, more and more are coming around to understand this. It's shocking to them, but they're starting to understand it. Is two things. And the way I portray this is, you have to understand that abortion is mobile, or mobile, however you like to say it. And that is two things. So here in the great state of Texas, where I live, if a woman, where abortion is illegal across the board, if a woman decides that she wants an abortion, she can get in her car and go to a state where abortion is legal. In many cases, I live in Dallas, that would be heading west to New Mexico. It's possible even that she might drive up through Oklahoma into Kansas and get an abortion there. So it's mobile in that way. But much more insidious in my mind, and this is many pro-lifers' jaws drop, because they're not into it day to day like you and I are, Nathan. And that is the abortion pill. So already, almost, we're probably at the point where 7 out of 10 abortions in our country are done by the abortion pill. And the suppliers of the abortion pill pretty much don't care what the state laws are, or federal law, or anything.
Well, especially in California and New York, where they literally protect them, and they allow them to distribute them to any state in the country,
or even domestic suppliers. But even, and here's where it gets really tricky, is international suppliers of
Mm-hmm.
the abortion pill. So if you go on the website plannedcpills.org, and they have like all 50 states listed there. And
Wow.
even if you click on Texas, you'll go in, it'll still say, yes, abortion is illegal in Texas, but here's what you can do. And there's like this list of overseas suppliers who will ship this in straight to your door. And do you think those overseas suppliers are worried about what your state law is, or even in the future, if there is a federal law, they just don't care? That's why I say
black market abortion. We call it the chemical coat hanger. And, the reason we see that the abortion numbers have gone up so much just in the last 2 years, since Roe was overturned, is because it's more accessible than ever, because so much funding is behind abortion. I mean, I did a project the other day. I think it was $1.2 billion was raised to fund abortion. I don't even know if that included Planned Parenthood in the figure, since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And that's a lot of money. I mean, we struggled to raise even a fraction of that to provide the alternative,
Exactly.
So,
well, to your point in terms of how much let's talk about, if we break it down in industry, the Team Pro-Life and Team Pro-Abortion. The Team Pro-Life fundraising collectively is a single-digit percentage of the other side. If you take into account all aspects of revenue, like private philanthropy, government funding, that's really where we get basically taken to the woodshed, is on the public funding. And Planned Parenthood, because of their size, are able to get all kinds of public funding, city, state, federal, big numbers. And currently there's no entity on our team that has that kind of size that can justify
that's a conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But I was just thinking about how this is a conversation that we've been having for a long time. Emily and I have been having with different movement leaders. So just for example, Lila Rose, we sat down and we talked through this, and we're like, hey, it's a tiny fraction. And then it's all divided up, whereas on the other side, it's kind of more consolidated, and they all work together. And on our side, it's like everybody has a different approach to ending abortion, right? And people are not working together as much as they should. But I think everything is shifting now, because the victory that everybody wanted, Roe v. Wade being overturned, obviously didn't do what people thought it would do. And honestly reminds me of the drug war, because it was great intentions. And it was a great man even that, started the drug war. But clearly that has been ineffective. And I think we have the same situation on our hands here, where, it's not going to decrease the demand, and the supply is still there, regardless of whether it's illegal or not. So we really have to approach the culture. And I think that that's one of the things that Let Them Live does a good job of, is, because when we save a life, it's not just the one life, it's the parents, it's the parents of the parents, the grandparents, right? It's siblings, cousins, there's so many lives that are impacted by that one life being saved. And in most cases that we've dealt with directly, we notice that their minds shift, because they know that they were advocating for this child to be aborted, and now they love this child. And so we see that their minds are shifting because of that love. And that's what we want to see, is, the movement shifting towards this type of model of supporting women. And there are more organizations than ever that are doing that. So I think the funds in the pro-life movement are shifting in that direction. Everything seems to be shifting in that direction. I'm feeling it. We're feeling it, because our team is, struggling to keep up with the amount of moms that are coming to us, and with the amount of funds. Like, trying to keep up with both of those at the same time and balance them is challenging, But Let Them Live is growing very quickly for a reason. And I think that it really is just because a lot of other pro-life people are seeing the same thing, and they're seeing that overturning Roe didn't solve the problem. We need to do more,
And I've mentioned this on previous shows, but it bears repeating because it's so important, and it gets to what you just said. And many people, even people who would lean pro-life, there's still a very large contingent of pro-lifers who would say, well, I wouldn't do that, but I don't want to take that choice away from someone else, right?
Yeah.
And what a lot of those people don't realize is, and you know this from frontline experience based on what you just said about how many women, once they have that support, completely change their minds and choose life. So what most people don't realize is that, and there's great research to back this up, especially one that was published last May, is 6 out of 10 women who get abortions say that they would have preferred to choose life if only they had been given financial support and emotional support. Well, guess what it is that let them live off it, right? Both of those things. And think about the impact of that. So if there are roughly 1 million abortions every year, and somehow all these women were aware of the support that was available to them, the financial and emotional support, it would mean an impact of about 600,000 lives a year. Think about that.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. And actually, I think that statistic is low because we're dealing with the hardest cases. So we have like a triaging formula. We'll only support financially women that are going to have abortions if we don't step in. And I think our average success rate is around 90%, but we have some months where we're 100% successful. So every mom that comes to us chooses life. And, it seems like that percentage just continues to increase as we get better at counseling. We introduce other things like not just financial support, but like coaching and mentorship and local community and stuff like that. So I've just noticed, I think the percentage is a lot higher. And especially when you think, okay, let's say we did do that. Let's say we did save 600,000 lives a year. Clearly the culture has now shifted.
yeah,
The culture is going to go the other direction. People are going to feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing this because it's kind of not acceptable in the culture anymore, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what I want to see happen is the culture shift. But like I said before, it's one life at a time. We can only save
yeah.
one life at a time. There's a lot of organizations doing a lot of different great things, and we're just trying to work with everybody. That's our
Yeah.
goal, is just to let everybody know we're a resource, we're here, we want to help, and we also want to teach other people the model that we're using so that they can have the same success we're having. Because another thing is, you go into a pregnancy center and they quote this a lot. I think it's 80%. You might know the statistic. 80% of women who see an ultrasound in a pregnancy center will choose life, right? But most of those women are not abortion determined. Most of those women they don't have abortions scheduled. So that statistic that the pro-life movement has completely revolved around for so long is unfortunately just not really correct.
Yeah.
An ultrasound can help, but it's really just a stepping stone. You have to do a lot more than just an ultrasound. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, in our experience, and we too at Heroic Media, we connect these women, again, like you, abortion determined, as we call it, abortion determined women, to those centers. And our statistics, just because it's easy to remember, it's roughly half that will change their minds and choose life. It's not 80%. It's not 80% of women who are hardcore, I want to get an abortion, and just because they see an ultrasound change their minds and choose life. I agree with you. That's highly overstated. It's really more, in our experience, it's about half. But even
Still
so,
great.
it's amazing, right? And I think it still supports that 60% number that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And so if we even look at that other 4 out of 10, it's a great point you make. It's if the culture is changing, if the environment is changing, and women already know that that kind of love and support is available to them, even a number of that 4 out of 10 might start moving in that direction. Then it becomes kind of a tsunami of
Yeah.
really becoming what the pro-life world has always wanted, which is a pro-life culture, which we don't have right now. We do not.
I mean,
We haven't had a pro-life culture in a long, long time.
what you're
And
doing, like getting women in for an ultrasound and it's successful, that means they're not getting referred to us. So they could be abortion determined, but they're not getting referred to us because they've already chosen life after seeing an ultrasound, right? So that means we're getting an 89% success rate on the other 50%. So when you put those together, then we see, okay, look, we actually could have over a 90% success rate when we all work together and we have like a universal system, right? And that's something I'm working on. We're working on something called the One Life Funnel, which is like every mom needs to go through the same kind of triaging process and get resources based on her needs. So if it's just an ultrasound, that's great because it's going to cost us a lot of money to save all those lives. And we have to focus on the ones that, like, at least for Let Them Live, we're focused on the ones that are the hardest cases. Like, I can give you an example from your home state. You know, there's a young girl, she was 14, and she was being forced against her will to have an abortion in Texas. And her parents were taking her to Texas to have the abortion. And they actually her dad threatened to kill the baby, to basically beat her up and kill the baby if she didn't have the abortion. And we stepped in, I flew out there. I actually ended up finding out that it was not her parents. It was actually a more sinister organization, and she was being trafficked, which I'm working on a book about this right now. I basically kicked the hornet's nest, which was really scary. And I can't get into that too much right now, but, you know, there's this huge movement of people being forced against their will to have abortions as well. And we reach, you know, most of the time, I mean, there's some element of that. There's emotional coercion, there's pressure from significant others or from family, you know. And then of course you have the financial pressure, but it's a combination of all these variables that ultimately leads to abortion, you know.
For sure.
Oh, and we just put up a billboard in Texas, by the way. So I thought that was cool.
Where is it?
Actually, I don't know exactly where it's at. You'd have to ask one of my other team members, but it's pretty cool. I'll let you know. I'll send you the location.
Okay, cool. I want to see it. All right. So all that was awesome. Now I'm going to step way back because I can't just let you skirt over the part where suddenly you became pro-life. So it's like, I bet you it was more of a process than that. So I'd like you to talk about that. And then if you can, and I asked Emily this question, but I think coming from you as a man, so as you talk about that, can you also think about and maybe kind of work that in there? It's like, there's a lot of guys out there who are like you were, and or maybe they're not quite like you were, but they're kind of like lukewarm on this issue. They're kind of like not sure. What would you recommend either to them directly or to someone who knows someone like them and would like to influence them in this direction?
The very first thing that made me question the issue of abortion at all was seeing a created equal display of an aborted baby next to I think it was a penny. And I was in college and I remember thinking, that's terrifying. And I think I even threw up, and I thought it was disgusting. You know, I did not like it. So that was the first step for me, was realizing I do not like abortion. But then I also recently was reading through my journal from around the same time, shortly after that, where I actually said, you know, I had a pregnancy scare with my girlfriend, and I said, you know, it's her choice. If she wants to have an abortion, I'll support her. So I think that I was very conflicted, and I think most American men are conflicted about, like, well, what is our responsibility? What is our role? You know, is it supporting a woman if we're saying, hey, it's your choice, it's your body, it's your choice? You know, I think that was the struggle that I had, was just thinking that that was the case. Like, your body, your choice, right? It's up to you. I'm going to support you. And that felt like supporting them. But what I've found that, you know, and this is the same way with Jesus, right? Or God, like, Jesus loves us all, right? But he also flips the tables, you know, in the synagogue, you know, because he's not just going to let us go and do something that is going to completely change our life forever. You know, he's not going to let us kill other people. So obviously Jesus's heart breaks for these moms that are having these abortions. And as a man, it's my duty to inform them that this is a life, show them that it's a life, the science, I mean, the scientific proof is there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy that the propaganda machine has convinced people so thoroughly that it's not a life when you can literally see it, right? So I usually start with that, and I mean, I have definitely I've converted a lot of pro-choice people to supporting let them live. So they're still pro-choice, but they're like, I love what let them live does because it gives women another choice, right? And that seems to be a good stepping stone, is like, hey, you can support women choosing life if that's what they want and still hold your, lukewarm opinion, but it's not going to be lukewarm for long, because as soon as you refer a woman to let them live, your heart's going to start shifting. When you see that baby born, you get to hold that baby, you're like, wow, this baby was almost aborted, and for me, I think that has to be, it's kind of like in the Schindler's List. And in Schindler's List, Oscar Schindler has this moment where he's looking down at this crowd, of Jewish people that are just walking around, and this little girl in this red dress, just like, it's the only color in the film, right? And then the
Yeah.
whole film becomes color after that point, because what happens is Oscar Schindler has this like radical transformation where he realizes that they're human. And that's the transformation that we need everyone to have. And I think it's through them witnessing a life being saved from abortion, or a life that was otherwise going to be ended, not being ended. I think that that's what ultimately transforms their hearts. And that's what happened to me. I mean, even up to the point that we saved that first baby, I didn't realize how much my blinders were up. I just had no idea until, and even after that, like when I actually held a baby that I saved from abortion, like it's like the even more blinders went down, like everything else seemed less important. So I see my own perspective on it shifting and growing. I become more and more pro-life the longer that I do this work.
Yeah. You hit on something really cool, which, at least in the pro-life world, is very, it isn't talked about enough. I'll put it that way. And I've thought this for a while, and our team in the direction that we're moving at Heroic Media has been talking about this, and you said it, which was that it can be very difficult to just sit down with someone who is pro-choice and give them the pro-life apologetics dump, even if you're really good at it, and have them actually change their hearts and minds on this issue. Yet, if you come at it, and this kind of comes back to our demand side approach, which is focus 100% on the woman, the woman, the woman, the woman, the woman. If you give the woman what she wants and needs, she will give you what you want and need, which is the decision to not abort, right? That's the classic
Well, I
sales
mean,
pitch.
it's natural. She doesn't want to abort. I mean, it's the motherly instinct inside of her. She does not. I mean, that's inherently part of who she is being a mother.
Yeah.
And so reminding her of that and then surrounding her with support, I mean, that changes her heart really quick.
So
As far as the people around her, not as quick, but
yeah, sure. But think how huge it is, because there are millions of Americans like this who are, I just want to say to my pro-life brothers and sisters, they're probably not going to change their minds on this. That doesn't mean that they're big cheerleaders for abortion, right? It means that they just have this belief system as Americans about everybody wanting to have freedom to do such and such. And yes, I realize abortion is not freedom, it's license. I know all those talking points, but it's not, this is how these people believe. And yet they're not so lost and hard-hearted and frankly just evil that they're like, abortion no matter what. Like you were saying earlier, there are people like that. Forced abortions.
oh yeah, there are.
Yeah.
There are.
But
I mean, I can remember the first time I got a call, and it was early in the early days of Let Them Live. And this guy's like, I'm giving you guys $1,000, but I needed to ask you some questions first.
mm,
You know, what exactly are you guys doing with this $1,000 I give you? And I was like, well, it's going to pay for a month rent for this mom. We're going to get her back into an apartment. And he was like, well, I'm pro-choice, but I wanted to call you and hear you out and see what you're about and see what you're going to do with my money. And you earned my money. And then he donated $1,000. And since then, we've had literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of pro-choice donors to let them live. And I think it's just because they do still have a heart for women. They don't just want women to only have the one choice. That's why
Right.
they're called pro-choice, right? So to really actually be pro-choice, you need to support multiple choices. You can't just be like abortion, 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 right? So
Right.
there is a difference in my mind too between like pro-abortion and pro-choice. And I distinguish the two. Like Bill Gates is pro-abortion, right? Population control.
Yeah.
But most Americans that are pro-choice, they want women to have choice.
Yeah.
We can start to shift their minds towards our side just by showing them the fruit of what we do. And a lot of those
And
people have changed.
yeah, and even importantly, they're pro-choice. But it's so important what you said is they will support you and your ministry financially, which really means they're willing to support with their resources, time, talent, and treasure, these women who without that support would choose abortion. So just, you're exactly right. It doesn't mean they're telling those women to not have an abortion. But if they realize those women, if they had that support, would choose life, they're going to support them. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And more, I believe more people in the pro-life community need to understand that dynamic, because to me, it gets to the point which we have been talking about a lot, which is if the approach is support of women emotionally, financially, and I would add to that good medical care. If that is the approach, the demand side approach, because what we're starting to talk about now is we're getting into the area of marketing. It's like, what product and service do I need to have in order to win that woman's decision, right? And the women are telling us very clearly through research, through
Yeah.
real ministries like yours, it's not a secret. They're telling
Yeah, we
us
know. We know.
exactly what they need in order to buy what we're offering. And so that is the focus. And what they're not telling us is, oh, you need to convince me that's a life. They already know
Yeah.
it's a life, right?
Yeah.
Those days are long gone. They know it's a life. They're still making that decision anyway because they're
And
in
they're
desperate
struggling.
situation. Yeah, it's a desperate situation, and it's not like they're
Well,
making this rational kind of decision. It's like it's fear based. It's completely emotional. And if you give them the things that they need to settle them down, the vast majority of the time, as you know from your experience, they will choose life.
yeah, and I think the legislative stuff is going to continue, obviously, especially on a state level for a while until, the culture shifts, and then, federally, I'm sure there will be legislation outlawing abortion at some point. Um,
Yeah.
in the meantime, I look at it this way, like women are needing our help. They need to know that we exist. We need
Yeah.
to compete in the marketplace. We haven't competed in the marketplace. The pregnancy centers are not networked together. Some of them are, but they're not a part of the same process. They don't have one standard process, that's the most effective way of saving a life, right? And we don't have everything integrated together the way that the other side does. And I think it's because we were very distracted by the overturning of Roe, which, I mean, I was happy when Roe was overturned. That was a cool moment. But
Of course.
I also realized that like that may not change anything. And what it actually did is at the moment that Roe was overturned, our funds went down and the amount of moms coming to us went up for a short period of time. And now we're seeing that the pro-life community is realizing, oh, abortion didn't end. Like
The
it's
Great Awakening.
yeah, like people are starting to realize that, and we have the statistics. So it's kind of like when they started putting the notice on cigarettes that they were harmful, right? There's this whole battle. Like doctors were saying, oh, they're not harmful for your health. There's this battle between the cigarette, like the tobacco industry, and the the people that were saying, clearly this is harmful for your health, I think we're kind of engaged in that same battle. And the more successes that we have, the more easily we can convey that the statistics, and we can show that it hurts women. I mean, just another example is just the rate of miscarriage goes up, the rate of cancer goes up, all these things go up after having an abortion. So it's just not good for women, period. I mean, we could go on and on about that forever, but it's just, I mean, I think it's going to shift though. I feel really good about it, Brett. Like I feel the energy is shifting, and people are wanting to adopt that demand side model. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing. So we're seeing the pro-life movement shift. The existing kind of establishment is kind of having to realize that as well. And then they're having to support this shift as well,
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. So as we wrap up here, gosh, we've been talking for over 40 minutes. It's incredible. It feels like 5 minutes. So men are listening to this. Probably the vast majority of them are pro-life. If not, they're pro-choice in the definition that you and I have laid out as pro-choice. What would be your advice about men upping their game? Most of the men who listen to this podcast are already, they're Christians, they're believers, they're seekers of how to become more virtuous and holy. What would you recommend to men in terms of what they can do on a day-to-day basis to continue to up their game? We all need to up their game until our very last breath. But what are some of the things that you would recommend?
My pastor today said, if you really are a Christian, then you'll pick up your cross and follow Christ, and you'll do what Christ would do, which is to serve people. Yeah. And you'll lay down your life for others. And I think a lot of people that are pro-life are kind of just afraid to make that jump and to make that commitment. But once you do it, once you do that one time, like if you hear about a woman that's struggling, a woman that's pregnant, that is about to have an abortion, most of us that are pro-life have heard about that at some point. Like it really is our duty as a man to do as much as we can, everything that's in our power to try and save that life. And, we have this wonderful documentary that's coming out very soon with one of my best friends, Matt March. He was living in Peru. He heard about this girl that was going to have an abortion. He ended up helping her to choose life instead. And it just transformed him, and I think that's the biggest thing is if we can go out there, there's so many women having abortions. So I think if we just listen, I mean, that's how Let Them Live has grown to where it's at now, is by listening. We're listening to the demand. We're seeing the demand. We're looking for these women that are choosing abortion. And then we're just helping them. We're giving them what we have, and then, some more, and that's how Let Them Live grew into an organization. Is Nathan and Emily didn't have anything else to give, and so we had to turn to donors. We had to find donors. That's a good outlet for people too. I think being able to donate to an organization that actually does the work and involves them in the work, so that they get to see, like, okay, here's the ultrasounds of the baby you saved. Here's the picture of the baby you saved. Here's like a 1 year update on the baby you saved. I think that makes a huge difference. And I see our donors like going from, giving us $25 to giving us all of their money, which is exactly what we did, Yeah. So I think that's cool. I like to see people doing that. And then I also see that when you give away everything, then God rewards you. And that's not the reason for doing it, but things just start to happen that don't seem to make sense. Like I was talking about with the Airstreams, like selling for 15 or 20,000 more than what I paid for them, right? It didn't really make sense, but it was just like a God wink, God, like, we needed exactly this much to save this life, and here it is, and so you keep doing it, and it just keeps getting easier, and you get addicted to saving lives, Yeah. But, that That's first awesome. Step is like, just listen, find one woman and help them,
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Before we sign off, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about Let Them Live, and anyone that listens to this episode, like, how can they help you? What can they do?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Hawaiian shirts, and my team kind of surprised me with the shirt that I'm wearing right now. They designed this, "Let Them Live" shirt here.
Oh,
Um,
sweet. Love it.
so just a quick plug for the Hawaiian shirt that's on our shop, but Let Them Live. We run fundraisers for moms that have imminent abortions, and we help them cancel it. We do a lot. There's a lot of people behind the scenes helping in different ways, like paying bills, raising funds, counseling the moms, coaching the moms, surrounding them with love and support. So you kind of need a team in order to intervene, because at least when I started, my success rate was a lot lower. I was the first counselor at Let Them Live, and my success rate might have been, 35%. But as I started to build a team, then it just kept increasing to the numbers we're seeing now, which is like 90%. So I think kind of supporting an existing organization is a good way to get started, and then watching how it's done and being involved in that process. So I would just say, joining, like, especially joining our club. We have a club called the Heartbeat Club. You get to see like the back end of Let Them Live and see the work that's being done, and really like hear from the counselors, hear from the coaches, hear from the people that are talking to the moms, hear the statistics, and it just kind of gets you amped up. And like I can't imagine dedicating my life to anything else now because of that. So I just hope that other people can kind of have that same spark in them that
Yeah.
turns into a wildfire.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well said. So thank you for all the work that you've been doing. It's so encouraging to hear that your approach, the demand side approach, is taking off, that your business continues to grow. It says to me exactly what you said. It gives me great hope and optimism that people that are out there, that this issue is something that's very important to them. They're starting to understand that we have to do things differently than we did pre-Roe. And it's a beautiful thing in my mind. It's a big country, so it's going to take a while to turn all these people this direction, but it's starting to happen. And it's beautiful because, one, just circling back to what Sheepdog Brotherhood is all about, God has assigned as a duty to every man the dignity of every woman. It gives all of us men that opportunity to actually do that, certainly do it within those women within our circle of influence, but women like these who we'll probably never meet, right? But we get to do that as well. And those women know that they've been supported by men like you, like me, and like others, like other
Yeah.
sheepdogs, as we would call them.
Yeah.
So I think it's an exciting time. Our culture certainly needs it for sure. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and just praying for you.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for having
continue.
me on. And I would encourage people to just go out on the sidewalk and talk to people. And within days, you're going to find somebody that needs you.
That's right.
And that's just how it goes. So, but yeah, I really appreciated being on your show. I love what you guys do too, and keep it up. Like, I'm sure there are ways that we're going to continue to work together, and
100%.
this is just going to keep growing. I mean, we're not stopping anytime soon. We're just focused on that next life, right? So
That's
the
awesome.
whole movement needs to be focused on that next life, and if we did that, we would end abortion.
There you go. The website is letthemlive.org, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. All right, Nathan, thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to Emily. Thank you to all the team at Let Them Live, and just praying for your continued success.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Yeah, it was great being on. Thank you. God bless you too.